The morning sun rose over New Hebron just like it had for the past 20 years. Children walked to school while their parents headed to work in the farming districts. The colony had grown from a small settlement to a thriving city of 2.3 million people. Nobody expected this day would be their last. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the captain's chair of the patrol ship Defiant, drinking her morning coffee. Her crew was running routine checks near the edge of the system. It was boring work, but somebody had to do it. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years now, and most aliens still treated humans like children who had just learned to walk. Sarah did not mind too much. Humanity was new to space, and the other races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The Krell Dominion alone had controlled their sector for over 3,000 years. They were reptilian creatures, tall and covered in dark scales with eyes that never seemed to blink. They made Sarah uncomfortable, but the Council promised peace between all member species. That promise died at 9:37 in the morning. The sensor officer shouted a warning. Sarah spilled her coffee as she jumped up. On the main screen, dozens of ships appeared from faster-than-light travel. They were Krell vessels, their dark hulls shaped like daggers pointed at New Hebron. Sarah opened communications immediately. "This is Commander Chen of the United Earthship Defiant. You are entering human space without authorization. Please state your intentions." There was no response. The Krell ships moved into position above New Hebron. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming, but her mind refused to accept it. "Get us closer," she ordered, "maximum speed, and send a priority alert to Earth." The Defiant raced toward the planet, but it was too small and too far away. Sarah watched helplessly as the Krell ships began firing. Bright beams of energy struck the surface. Cities vanished in flashes of light. The planet's atmosphere caught fire in places. Within minutes, the entire surface was burning. Sarah's hands gripped the armrests of her chair so hard they hurt. Her crew sat in stunned silence. Some were crying. Others looked like they might be sick. 2.3 million people had just died, and they could do nothing but watch. The Krell ships finished their work and began turning toward the Defiant. Sarah's tactical officer reported that they were being targeted. 3 Krell cruisers broke formation and headed their way. "Prepare for emergency jump," Sarah said. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, hollow and distant. "Get us out of here, now." The Defiant's faster-than-light drive activated just as the Krell fired. The ship shook violently and alarms blared throughout the bridge. They had taken a glancing hit, but they had escaped. Sarah ordered the crew to record everything their sensors had captured. The galaxy needed to see what the Krell had done. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Sarah spent most of that time in her quarters, staring at the walls. She had joined the fleet to explore the galaxy and meet new species. She had not signed up to watch millions of people die. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw New Hebron burning. When the Defiant reached Earth, Sarah was summoned immediately to United Earth Government headquarters. She stood before the Council of Nations and played the recording. The chamber fell silent as the leaders of Earth watched New Hebron die. Some looked away. Others wept openly. When the recording ended, the room erupted in shouting. "This is an act of war," the Chinese representative declared. "We must respond with force," agreed the American president. "Against the Krell Dominion?" The European Union chancellor shook her head. "They have thousands of ships. We have barely 200. This would be suicide." Ambassador Yuki Tanaka, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, reported from the Council station. The Council had held an emergency session. The Krell representative had called the attack a population management action in response to human expansion into contested space. New Hebron had been in human territory for 2 decades, but the Krell did not care about such details. The Council had voted to express their deep concerns about the situation. They encouraged both sides to pursue diplomatic solutions. Not a single species voted to condemn the Krell or sanction them. The Krell Dominion was too powerful, and humanity was too new and too weak to matter. Ambassador Tanaka's message ended with her own opinion. "We are alone in this. The Council will not help us. If we want justice for New Hebron, we must take it ourselves." Sarah was promoted to captain and given command of a new ship, the Vengeance. She did not feel honored. She felt angry. The United Earth government was moving into what they called total mobilization. Every factory was being retooled. Every shipyard was working around the clock. Retired military officers were being called back to service. Admiral Marcus Webb addressed the fleet in a message broadcast to every military installation. He was an old man with silver hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong. For 15 years, we tried to be good neighbors in the galaxy. We followed the rules. We sought peace. The Krell have shown us that peace is only possible when you are strong enough to defend it. We were not strong enough. Our people on New Hebron paid the price for our weakness. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. That changes now. We will build ships. We will train soldiers. And we will show the Krell Dominion and every other species in this galaxy that humanity will not roll over and die. Because someone decided, we do not matter. The Krell struck first, but we will strike last. Sarah watched the speech from the bridge of the Vengeance. Around her, the crew nodded in agreement. These men and women had all lost someone on New Hebron. Friends, family, loved ones. They wanted the same thing Sarah wanted. They wanted the Krell to pay. But Sarah also felt something else beneath her anger. She felt fear. Not fear of dying, but fear of what humanity might become. Earth had spent centuries trying to leave behind its violent past. Wars had nearly destroyed the planet multiple times before humanity finally learned to work together. Now they were going back to war. And Sarah wondered if they would be able to stop once they started. She pushed those thoughts aside. New Hebron needed to be avenged. The Krell needed to learn that humans were not prey animals to be culled when convenient. Whatever it took, whatever it cost, humanity would make sure this never happened again. The Vengeance finished its shakedown cruise and was declared ready for combat. Sarah received her orders. She would lead a small fleet to the Krell border and begin what Admiral Webb called aggressive reconnaissance. Sarah knew what that really meant. They were going hunting. As the Vengeance jumped into faster-than-light travel, Sarah looked at the empty space where New Hebron had been. The colony was gone, but its memory would live on. Every human in the fleet carried that memory now. It drove them forward, pushed them past their fear, and gave them purpose. The Krell had struck first. They had done so thinking humanity would beg for mercy or hide behind the useless Galactic Council. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing the one thing the peaceful galaxy had forgotten. They were bringing war. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and studied the tactical map. 6 other ships floated nearby in the darkness of space. They were all that remained of what had once been called the Third Exploratory Fleet. Now they had a new name. Admiral Webb had called them the Ghost Fleet, and their mission was simple: make the Krell pay. The target was a supply station on the edge of Krell territory. Intelligence reported it was lightly defended. Only 2 patrol ships and a handful of automated defenses. Sarah knew the real challenge would be getting in and out before reinforcements arrived. All ships report ready, her first officer said. Sarah nodded. Begin the attack. The Ghost Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on top of the station. The Krell were caught completely off guard. Human ships opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. The station's shields collapsed within seconds. The 2 Krell patrol ships tried to fight back, but they were not ready. One exploded when a missile struck its reactor. The other tried to run. Sarah ordered 2 ships to pursue it. The Krell ship was faster, but human missiles were relentless. It died 5 minutes later. The station itself was evacuated. Sarah could see escape pods fleeing in all directions. She let them go. Her orders were to destroy military targets, not murder civilians. The Vengeance fired a spread of missiles into the station's main structure. Secondary explosions rippled through the facility. Within minutes, it was nothing but debris. Jump us out, Sarah ordered, before their friends show up. The Ghost Fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the Krell supply station burned. It was a small victory, but it was a start. Back on Earth, the factories worked day and night. Humanity was building ships at a rate that shocked the galaxy. The designs were crude compared to Krell technology. Human ships had thicker armor but weaker shields. They carried old-fashioned kinetic weapons alongside modern energy guns. Some alien observers called them primitive. Others called them brutal. What nobody expected was how many ships humanity could build. The Krell had been building their fleet for thousands of years. They had hundreds of massive cruisers and battleships, but they built them slowly, carefully, with artistic precision. Humans built their ships fast and dirty. What they lacked in elegance, they made up for in numbers. Admiral Webb explained the strategy to his officers. The Krell think war is an art form. They believe in honor and tradition. We are going to show them that war is not art. War is a job, and humans are very good at their jobs. The Ghost Fleet struck again 2 weeks later. This time they hit a mining operation in an asteroid field. The Krell defenders fought hard, but they were not prepared for human tactics. Sarah's ships hid among the asteroids, using them as cover. When Krell vessels came close, human ships would blast out of hiding and fire at point-blank range. One human destroyer took heavy damage and could not escape. The captain made a decision that would become famous throughout the fleet. Instead of surrendering or abandoning ship, he aimed his vessel at a Krell cruiser and hit maximum thrust. The destroyer crashed into the cruiser at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. The Krell were horrified. Ramming was considered the act of desperate savages. But desperate savages kept winning. The mining operation was destroyed, and the Ghost Fleet escaped once again. War Master Krellthar sat in his command chamber on the Krell homeworld and read the reports with growing anger. These humans were not fighting like civilized beings. They ambushed supply convoys. They used nuclear weapons, which most species had banned centuries ago. They employed cyber attacks to disable Krell computer systems. They even used biological weapons on one military base, releasing a virus that made the defenders too sick to fight. They are barbarians, Krellthar hissed to his advisors. They have no honor, no respect for the proper way to wage war. One brave advisor dared to speak. Perhaps, War Master, but they are winning. Krellthar struck the advisor across the face with his tail. They are winning minor skirmishes against unimportant targets. When we commit our full strength, these primitives will break like all the others. But privately, Krellthar was worried. The Krell Dominion had not fought a real war in over 500 years. Their last conflicts had been brief police actions against minor species. Those species had surrendered quickly when they saw the might of the Krell fleet. The humans should have done the same. Instead, they fought back with a ferocity that seemed insane. The Galactic Council watched the conflict with growing unease. Ambassador Tanaka attended every session and made sure humanity's voice was heard. When the Krell representative accused humans of war crimes, Tanaka had a sharp response. You destroyed an entire colony without warning. You killed 2.3 million civilians. You started this war. Now you complain that we fight back too hard? She looked around the chamber at the other species. Where were all of you when New Hebron burned? We asked for help. We asked for justice. You gave us nothing but words. So we will give you results. The smaller species in the council began to whisper among themselves. For thousands of years they had lived under the shadow of the great powers. Species like the Krell could do whatever they wanted and nobody dared to challenge them. Now humanity was challenging them, and the humans were not losing. The Nexari Collective, a species of traders and merchants, approached Ambassador Tanaka in private. They offered to share intelligence about Krell ship movements and supply routes. In exchange, they wanted human protection for their trade convoys. Tanaka agreed immediately. With Nexari intelligence, the Ghost Fleet became even more effective. Sarah's ships seemed to appear out of nowhere, strike fast and vanish before the Krell could respond. Supply lines were disrupted. Military outposts were destroyed. Krell ships began traveling in larger groups for safety, which only made them easier to track. After 6 months of raids, Admiral Webb called Sarah back to Earth. She expected to be given a new assignment or perhaps a medal. Instead, Webb showed her the plans for a massive offensive. We have been stinging them like insects, Webb said. Now it is time to show them we can bite. The Krell are planning to strike at Earth itself. We will be ready. Sarah looked at the defensive plans and felt her blood run cold. The Krell were committing 300 ships to the attack. It was the largest fleet they had assembled in centuries. If they reached Earth, the war would be over. What do we have to stop them? Sarah asked. Webb smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Everything. Humanity had not been idle. The moon had been transformed into a massive weapons platform. Thousands of railguns pointed toward space. Missile silos covered the surface. Automated defense platforms orbited Earth in layers. And hidden in the asteroid belt, humanity had built something special, something the Krell would never expect. They think we are primitives, Webb said. They think we only know how to fight dirty and run away. They are about to learn that primitives can be very creative when their home is threatened. Sarah received a new assignment. She would command a squadron of fast attack ships during the coming battle. Her job was to harass the Krell fleet and draw them into the kill zone. It was dangerous work, but Sarah did not hesitate. New Hebron still burned in her memory. The Krell fleet began moving toward Earth. War Master Krelthar led them personally aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. He was confident. 300 ships would be more than enough to crush the human homeworld. After Earth fell, the rest of humanity would surrender. Then the Krell could return to their proper place as the dominant power in the sector. As the Krell fleet approached the Sol system, Krelthar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fought well for primitives, but their luck had run out. Soon this annoying war would be over. He had no idea how wrong he was. The Krell fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 300 warships filled the space with their dark presence. War Master Krelthar stood on the bridge of his flagship and gazed at the small blue planet in the distance. Earth looked peaceful and vulnerable. He would enjoy watching it burn. All ships advance in formation, he commanded. Target the moon first. Destroy their military installations. Then we will move on to the planet itself. The Krell fleet began its approach. They moved slowly and carefully, maintaining perfect formation. This was how civilized species fought wars. With discipline. With honor. With overwhelming force that left no doubt about the outcome. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Vengeance as the enemy fleet advanced. Her squadron was positioned behind a cluster of satellites hidden from Krell sensors. All across the solar system, human forces waited in similar ambush positions. Remember, Admiral Webb's voice came through on the command channel. Let them get close. Let them think they are winning. Then we show them what humanity can do. The Krell fleet passed the orbit of Mars without incident. Krelthar nodded with satisfaction. The humans were not even trying to slow them down. Perhaps they had finally realized how hopeless their situation was. As the fleet crossed into the inner system, the first attacks came. Small groups of human ships darted out from behind asteroids and moons, fired missiles and retreated at maximum speed. The attacks were weak and poorly coordinated. Krelthar allowed his ships to return fire, destroying a few of the attackers. Primitives, he muttered. They send their young to die in futile gestures. What Krelthar did not know was that those attacks were not meant to hurt his fleet. They were meant to position it. Each time the Krell ships turned to engage the human attackers, they moved a little off course. Slowly, carefully, the humans were herding 300 Krell warships exactly where they wanted them. The Krell fleet reached the moon. Krelthar gave the order to begin bombardment. His ships opened fire on the lunar surface. Energy beams struck the gray rock and exploded in massive clouds of dust. Several installations were destroyed in the first volley. Then the moon fired back. Thousands of railguns opened up at once. Unlike energy weapons that could be partially blocked by shields, these guns fired solid metal slugs at incredible velocity. The projectiles punched through Krell's shields like they were not even there. Ships rocked under the impact. Armor crumpled. Several cruisers lost power and began drifting. Evasive action. Krelthar roared. Return fire on those gun positions. But the guns were buried deep in the lunar rock. The Krell could destroy the surface installations, but the main weapons were untouchable. More and more railgun rounds slammed into the fleet. A Krell battleship exploded when a slug penetrated straight through to its reactor core. Then the missiles launched. Thousands of them rose from hidden silos across the lunar surface. They filled the space between Earth and Moon with contrails and fire. Krell point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. Missiles struck ship after ship. This is impossible, one of Krelthar's officers cried. Intelligence said the humans only had a few hundred missiles. Intelligence was wrong, Krelthar growled. He was beginning to understand something terrible. The humans had been preparing for this. All their hit-and-run attacks, all their desperate tactics had been buying time for this moment. Sarah's squadron came screaming out of hiding. The Vengeance led a dozen ships in a high-speed attack run straight through the Krell formation. They fired everything they had, focusing on ships that were already damaged. One Krell cruiser, its shields down and armor breached, took a direct hit from the Vengeance's main guns. It broke in half. All ships scatter, Sarah ordered. Her squadron split in 12 different directions. The Krell tried to track them, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable. They had been designed specifically for this kind of fighting. Then the real surprise came. Hidden throughout the debris field of old satellites and space junk, thousands of automated drones activated. They were simple machines, nothing but a thruster and a nuclear warhead. They did not even have weapons targeting systems. They just flew toward the nearest large object and detonated. Krelthar watched in horror as suicide drones slammed into his ships. Each explosion was small, but there were hundreds of them. Shields flickered and failed under the constant assault. Smaller vessels were simply vaporized. Larger ships took critical damage, these barbarians. Krelthar slammed his fist on the command console. They use nuclear weapons like toys. They have no honor. His tactical officer interrupted. War Master, we have lost 40 ships. Many more are damaged. We should retreat and regroup. Retreat? Krelthar's eyes blazed with fury. The Krell Dominion does not retreat. We will push through their defenses and complete our mission. But the defensive platforms were just getting started. All around Earth, hidden installations revealed themselves. Massive laser arrays fired. Particle beam weapons cut through the void. And from the asteroid belt came dozens of human heavy cruisers that had been waiting there for weeks. The Battle of Terra, as it would be called in history books, lasted 14 hours. The Krell fought with desperation as they realized they were not winning. Ships that could no longer fight rammed into the defensive platforms. Damaged vessels tried to reach Earth's surface for one last attack, but humanity had prepared for everything. When a Krell destroyer broke through the defenses and headed for a major city, 3 human frigates intercepted it. They were too small to destroy the destroyer, but they did not need to. All 3 frigates rammed the larger ship at full speed. The destroyer was knocked off course and exploded harmlessly in the atmosphere. Admiral Webb watched from the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Each human ship that died hurt his heart, but he could not deny the effectiveness of their sacrifice. The Krell had never faced an enemy willing to die to protect their home. They did not know how to fight against that kind of determination. War Master Krelthar's flagship was hit by a railgun round that tore through the engine section. The Eternal Dominance went dark, its power systems failing. Krelthar tried to order a retreat, but his communications were down. Around him, the remains of his fleet were already running, those ships that could still move. Of the 300 ships that attacked Earth, only 73 escaped. The rest were destroyed or crippled. Sarah's squadron hunted down several fleeing vessels, destroying them before they could jump to faster-than-light speed. When the last Krell ship vanished into the darkness, a cheer went up across the human fleet. But there was no celebration on Earth. The victory had cost 200 human ships and over 50,000 lives. The moon's surface was scarred with craters. Several orbital platforms had been destroyed, and Krelthar's flagship still floated in space, its crew trapped inside. Admiral Webb made a decision that would shock the galaxy. He ordered Krelthar taken alive. Human Marines boarded the crippled flagship and fought their way to the bridge. The War Master tried to fight, but he was old and wounded. The Marines stunned him and brought him back to Earth in chains. Ambassador Tanaka immediately called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. When the council assembled, she stood before them with War Master Krelthar in a containment field beside her. "This is the leader who ordered the destruction of New Hebron," Tanaka said. Her voice was cold and hard. "This is the commander who brought 300 ships to destroy Earth. We captured him. We could have killed him, but we did not. Do you know why?" The council chamber was silent. Every species representative stared at the captive Krell with a mixture of shock and disbelief. The Krell were supposed to be unstoppable, yet here their greatest war master stood in chains, defeated by the species everyone had called primitive. "We spared him because we are not monsters," Tanaka continued. "We fight to defend ourselves, not to commit genocide. But make no mistake, the Krell started this war. They thought we would be easy victims. They were wrong." She activated a holographic display. It showed footage from the battle. The council watched as the Krell fleet was torn apart. They saw human ships sacrifice themselves. They saw the brutal efficiency of humanity's defenses. Many representatives looked away, unable to watch the carnage. "You call us barbaric," Tanaka said. "You call us primitive. But when the Krell came to destroy us, where were you? You did nothing. You said nothing. So we did what we had to do. We survived. And now the Krell will learn what it means to lose." 3 council species stood up and demanded that humanity be punished for excessive force. But for the first time in thousands of years, the smaller species found their voices. Representatives from a dozen minor civilizations spoke in support of humanity. They talked about living in fear of the great powers. They spoke of injustices they had suffered in silence. The vote was close, but the council did not condemn humanity. Instead, they agreed to establish tribunals for war crimes. Krelthar would be the first to stand trial. The Krell Dominion's allies quietly began distancing themselves from the conflict. Sarah Chen sat in her quarters aboard the Vengeance and watched the news broadcasts. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had proven that the old powers could be challenged. But Sarah felt no joy. She thought of all the people the Krell Dominion was in chaos. After the disaster at Earth, their military command structure had collapsed. Warmaster Krelthar was in human custody. More than 200 ships and their crews were lost. For a civilization that had not known defeat in 1,000 years, the shock was overwhelming. Admiral Marcus Webb stood before the United Earth government and presented his plan. It was called Operation Hellstorm, and it was designed to do one thing, and the Krell's ability to make war forever. "We cannot stop now," Webb said. "If we show weakness, the Krell will rebuild and attack again in 10 years or 20 or 50. We must make sure they never threaten anyone again." Some government representatives argued against the plan. They said humanity had already proven their point. The Krell had been defeated. Why continue the killing? But others remembered New Hebron. They remembered 2.3 million people who never got a chance to defend themselves. The vote was close, but Operation Hellstorm was approved. The human fleet, reinforced with newly built ships from the factories on Mars and Luna, prepared for the largest offensive in human history. They were not going to invade Krell territory. They were going to destroy every military installation the Krell had. Captain Sarah Chen was given command of the Ghost Fleet once again. Her mission was the most dangerous of all. She would lead a strike directly at the Krell homeworld, not to attack the planet but to disable their orbital defenses. If she succeeded, the Krell would have no choice but to surrender. Sarah gathered her squadron commanders in the briefing room. They all looked tired. They had been fighting for over a year now, and it showed in their faces. But their eyes still burned with determination. "This will not be easy," Sarah told them. "The Krell homeworld has defenses that make Earth's look primitive. They have been building them for 3,000 years. But they also have never been attacked. Their defenses are designed to stop an invasion fleet, not a fast strike force." She brought up a holographic map of the Krell system. "We will jump in here at the edge of their sensor range. Then we use maximum speed to reach the planet before they can organize a response. Our targets are the shield generators. Destroy those and the Krell will be defenseless." One commander raised his hand. "And if we cannot destroy them all?" Sarah looked him in the eye. "Then some of us will need to make sure they go down anyway." Everyone in the room understood what that meant. This was a one-way mission for anyone whose ship got too damaged to escape. Sarah could see the fear in their faces, but she also saw acceptance. They had all lost someone at New Hebron. If dying meant preventing another New Hebron, they would do it. The Ghost Fleet jumped into the Krell system 3 days later. 20 ships appeared out of nowhere and accelerated to maximum speed. Alarms blared across every Krell military installation. The impossible was happening. Earth was attacking them. The Krell had 36 warships in orbit around their homeworld. They scrambled to intercept the human ships. But the humans did not slow down or try to fight. They just kept accelerating, dodging return fire and launching missiles at anything that got too close. Sarah's tactical display showed multiple Krell ships on an intercept course. All ships maintain formation. Do not stop for anything. If you get hit, keep flying until you reach the target or you cannot fly anymore. The first human ship took a direct hit from a Krell battleship. Its shields collapsed and the hull was breached in a dozen places. But the captain kept the engines running. The damaged ship limped forward, trailing debris and atmosphere until it reached the nearest shield generator. Then it rammed the structure at full speed. The explosion took out the generator and the ship. 1 down. 7 more to go. Sarah's Vengeance led the charge toward the main shield complex. Krell fighters swarmed around them like angry insects. Point defense guns shot down dozens, but more kept coming. The Vengeance's shields were taking heavy damage. Sarah could smell burning circuits from the overloaded systems. "Give me everything," she shouted to her engineering team. "I need full power to weapons." The Vengeance fired its main guns at the shield generator. The first shot was absorbed by the generator's own shields. The second shot cracked them. The third shot punched through and hit the main structure. The generator exploded in a ball of blue fire. 2 down, 6 to go. All across the orbital zone, human ships were fighting and dying to reach their targets. A destroyer lost its engines but continued on momentum alone, using thrusters to aim itself at a generator. A frigate, completely engulfed in flames, crashed into a defense platform and destroyed both. Another ship, its crew dead and systems failing, was remotely piloted by AI into the final approach. Sarah watched as ship after ship sacrificed itself. These were not suicide attacks born from desperation. They were calculated decisions made by people who knew what they were dying for. Every generator destroyed was one less weapon the Krell could use against others. The Krell defenders fought with equal desperation. This was their homeworld. If they failed here, everything was lost. But they had trained for battles in space, not for enemies willing to turn their ships into missiles. The human tactics were insane, but they were working. Admiral Webb watched from Earth as reports came in. The Ghost Fleet was succeeding, but the cost was terrible. Of the 20 ships that went in, only 5 were still operational. The rest were destroyed or too damaged to fight. But they had taken out 6 of the 8 shield generators. Sarah's Vengeance was one of the ships still flying. Her hull was scarred and burned. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Life support was failing in 3 sections, but her engine still worked, and she had one more target to hit. All remaining ships concentrate on Generator 7, Sarah ordered. Hit it with everything we have left. 4 human ships converged on the target. They fired every missile they had. The generator's shields held for a moment, then collapsed under the barrage. The structure itself was heavily armored, but armor could not stop a ship traveling at combat speed. The destroyer, relentless, its captain dead, and half the bridge crew injured, made the final run. Sarah watched as the ship crashed into the generator and exploded. Generator 7 went down, 1 left, but Sarah's tactical display showed bad news. Krell reinforcements were arriving from other parts of the system. In 10 minutes, the Ghost Fleet would be surrounded and destroyed. Vengeance to all ships, Sarah broadcast. We need to take out that last generator now. I am going in. Anyone who can still fly, follow me. 3 ships formed up behind the Vengeance. They were all damaged. They were all running on emergency power, but they were still in the fight. The small formation accelerated toward the final shield generator. Krell weapons fire filled the space around them. One ship took a direct hit and exploded instantly. Another lost half its hull but kept flying. Sarah's shields finally failed completely. Energy beams scorched the Vengeance's armor. Sarah, her first officer, said quietly, "We are not going to make it." Sarah looked at the tactical display. He was right. They would not survive long enough to destroy the generator. Unless she did something drastic. All ships, this is Chen, break off and get out of here. That is an order. I am finishing this run. Captain, no. Her weapons officer protested. That is an order. Sarah repeated. Someone needs to tell Earth what happened here, now go. The 2 remaining ships peeled away and headed for the system edge. Sarah knew some of her crew would try to stop her. She locked everyone out of the helm controls. The Vengeance was under her command alone now. She aimed the ship directly at the shield generator and pushed the engines to maximum. The Krell threw everything they had at her. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic rounds. The Vengeance shook with each hit. Whole sections of the ship went dark. The bridge caught fire. Sarah strapped herself into the captain's chair and held course. She thought about New Hebron. She thought about the millions who died that day. She thought about all the people who had died in this war, both human and Krell. All because some powerful beings had decided that weaker species did not matter. This is for New Hebron, Sarah whispered. But at the last moment, something unexpected happened. The remaining crew, trapped in various parts of the ship, started sending her messages. They were not begging her to turn back. They were thanking her for leading them, thanking her for giving them a chance to mean something. Sarah realized she was not alone in this sacrifice. Her crew was choosing to die with her. They could have abandoned ship, but they stayed. They stayed because this mattered, because someone had to make sure the Krell never did this to anyone else. The Vengeance struck the shield generator at full velocity. The explosion was visible from the surface of the Krell homeworld. The last shield generator went offline. The Krell capital was defenseless. From orbit, Admiral Webb's fleet appeared. Dozens of human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They had been waiting for this moment. The Ghost Fleet had succeeded. Now it was time to deliver the ultimatum. Webb's message broadcast on all Krell frequencies. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Fleet. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. Your warships are... The wreckage of the Vengeance was recovered from orbit around the Krell homeworld. Most of the ship was destroyed, but they found the bridge intact. Captain Sarah Chen's body was still strapped in the captain's chair. Admiral Webb insisted on being present when they brought her home to Earth. Sarah was given a hero's funeral. Millions watched as her coffin was carried through the streets of Geneva. Flags flew at half-mast across the planet. She had become a symbol of humanity's determination and sacrifice. But to Admiral Webb, she was just another name on a list that had grown far too long. The Krell Dominion was broken into occupation zones. Human administrators worked with Krell civilians to establish a new government. All military shipyards were dismantled. The Krell fleet was reduced to a small defense force, barely enough to fight pirates. It would take them centuries to rebuild if they were ever allowed to. War Master Krellthar stood trial for war crimes at the new Galactic Court of Justice. It was a human idea, but dozens of species had supported it. For the first time in galactic history, the powerful would be held accountable for their actions against the weak. Krellthar showed no remorse. "I did what I believed was necessary for my people," he told the court. The humans were expanding too quickly. They needed to be controlled. The prosecution showed recordings from New Hebron, 2.3 million civilians dying in fire, children running from bombs, cities vanishing in flashes of light. The court chamber fell silent as the recordings played. Krellthar was found guilty of genocide and crimes against sapient life. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on a neutral station. As guards led him away, he looked at the human observers. "You have won this war," he said. "But you have also become what you fought against. Warriors, killers. You will never escape that now." His words haunted many humans. They had gone to the stars seeking peace and found only war. Now they were known throughout the galaxy as the species that had defeated the Krell. But at what cost? Ambassador Yuki Tanaka addressed the Galactic Council for the final time as humanity's representative. She was being promoted to a new position, one that had been created specifically for Earth. Humanity would join the Council's Security Directorate, a reformed body designed to prevent wars before they started. "We did not want this," Tanaka told the assembled species. "We wanted to be explorers and traders. We wanted to make friends among the stars." The Krell took that dream and burned it along with New Hebron. "They forced us to remember what we are capable of when we are pushed too far." She paused and looked around the chamber. Some species met her gaze. Others looked away. "But we refused to become the next bullies. We refuse to use our strength to oppress others. Instead, we will use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Any species, large or small, that faces aggression can call on Earth for help. We will answer." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some of the great powers objected to this proposal. They saw it as humanity trying to police the galaxy. But the smaller species, those who had lived in fear for generations, stood and applauded. For them, humanity's promise meant hope. The Nexari Collective was the first to sign a mutual defense treaty with Earth. Within months, 20 other species had done the same. Humanity began building new ships not for conquest but to patrol and protect. The phrase "protected by Earth" started appearing on trade routes and colony worlds. Admiral Webb retired after the war. He had done what he set out to do. The Krell were defeated and Earth was safe. But he could not forget the faces of all the people who had died under his command. Sarah Chen, the crew of the Relentless. The pilots who rammed their ships into Krell vessels. Thousands of names on a memorial wall that seemed to grow longer every time he looked at it. At his retirement ceremony, Webb gave a short speech. "We won the war, but we must never forget what war costs. Every person who died believed they were defending something worth dying for. They were right, but I hope humanity never has to make such sacrifices again. We fought so that others would not have to. Let that be our legacy." Earth began the long process of healing. The moon's surface was scarred with craters from the Battle of Terra. They decided to leave them as they were. Future generations would see those scars and remember the price of peace. A memorial was built at the site where New Hebron once stood. 2.3 million names were carved in stone. The human fleet continued to grow, but its mission changed. Instead of preparing for the next war, it focused on exploration and defense. Human ships escorted trade convoys through dangerous space. They responded to distress calls from mining colonies. They helped smaller species build their own defenses. The galaxy was changing. The old order, where the powerful did whatever they wanted, was breaking down. Species that had been silent for thousands of years found their voices. The Galactic Council became more democratic. New rules were established to prevent conflicts. And humanity, the species everyone had called primitive, was at the center of it all. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some of the great powers watched humanity's rise with suspicion and anger. They had lost influence and prestige. They whispered among themselves about the need to correct the situation. Humanity's allies warned Earth about these whispers, but the United Earth government was not worried. Let them whisper, the new Earth president said. Let them plot. But they should remember what happened to the Krell. We did not want that war. We did not start it. But we finished it. Anyone who threatens peace will learn the same lesson. 10 years after the war ended, a ceremony was held at New Hebron. The memorial was completed, and survivors from across human space came to remember. Old veterans stood in silence, looking at names they recognized. Young children asked their parents who these people were and why they died. Among the visitors was a young Krell. She had been born after the war and had grown up learning about what her people had done. She approached the memorial hesitantly, afraid of how the humans would react. An old human veteran saw her and walked over. He had lost his entire family at New Hebron. The Krell girl expected anger or hatred. Instead, the veteran just looked tired. "Why did your people attack us?" she asked quietly. The veteran was silent for a long time. "Your leaders thought we were weak. They thought we would not fight back. They were wrong." He gestured to the memorial. "This is the price of that mistake. Remember it. Make sure your children remember it. So it never happens again." The Krell girl nodded. She had come to New Hebron to understand. Now she did. The war had not just killed people. It had killed the innocence of two species. The humans had learned they could never let their guard down. The Krell had learned that power without wisdom leads to disaster. Back on Earth, a new generation of children were growing up. They learned about the war in school. They saw the recordings and read the accounts. But they also learned about the peace that followed. They learned that strength was not just about winning fights, but about protecting the weak. A reporter asked one of these children what she wanted to be when she grew up. She thought for a moment and said, "I want to join the fleet. Not to fight wars, but to make sure we never have to fight one again." That was humanity's new dream. They had proven they could wage war better than species with thousands of years of experience. Now they would prove they could keep the peace just as well. The galaxy had struck first, but humanity's response had been to build a future where no one would need to strike at all. On the bridge of a patrol ship far from Earth, a young officer looked out at the stars. She wore a uniform with a patch that showed Earth and the moon. Above them were the words, "Never again." It was the motto of the United Earth Fleet. The officer thought about all the species, living under Earth's protection. She thought about the treaties and alliances that kept the peace. She thought about Captain Sarah Chen and all the others who had died so that she could stand here in safety. "Never again," she whispered to the stars. The war was over. Humanity had won. But more importantly, humanity had not forgotten why they fought. They remembered New Hebron. They remembered the cost. And they would make sure that cost meant something. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about humanity. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest or the wisest. But when pushed to the edge, when their homes and families were threatened, they would do whatever it took to survive. And now that the fighting was done, humanity would do whatever it took to make sure no other species had to learn that same terrible lesson. The aliens had struck first, thinking humanity would be easy prey. Instead, they woke a sleeping giant. And that giant, having proven its strength, now used that strength to guard the weak and keep the peace. That was humanity's true revenge. Not destruction, but protection. Not conquest, but justice. The Krell had tried to erase humanity from the stars. Instead, humanity had become the stars' guardians. And they would remain vigilant, forever remembering the price of peace, forever ready to defend it. The galaxy would never forget the day the aliens struck first. But more importantly, it would never forget humanity's response, not with more violence than necessary, but with exactly enough. Not with cruelty, but with determination. Not to dominate, but to ensure it never happened again.